Hello everyone, so it is day 20, no, not 29, day 30 of vlogoween. So the other day I seen a video by Criminali where he talked about the 10 books that basically made him, kind of like shaped him as a reader. And I really love videos like that. I've seen like sort of similar ones, like, ones that got you into reading, maybe ones that got you in specific genres, etc. So like I really love video discussions like that, and I'll link this video down below. There's a couple other people that did something similar, so I definitely recommend checking those out. Like I said, great video. Yeah, it's one of my favorite videos to watch on BookTube. I love tags and stuff, but I feel we don't get enough actual like book discussions. Like not enough actual book reviews, not enough like discussions on why we read what we read or how we got into liking what we like. And we need more of those. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about 10 plus books that not only shape me as a reader, but also as a writer, actually. Because a lot of these things I'm looking to incorporate into my own writing, whether it be tropes, characters, etc. So there's little bits from each book that kind of got me into something else, one way or the other. Got my coffee. Really need some actual coffee cream. It's a little plain with just milk. But anyways, I don't think I could talk about reading or writing without, of course, mentioning Goosebumps. I enjoyed reading before that. I loved reading as a small child, but reading on my own and seeking out longer books was thanks to that. The first Goosebump book that I remember finishing, because I think I might have started one and I finished all of the original 62 now, but back then I think I picked up one or two, and I don't know if I just didn't have the attention span for something that long at the time, but I didn't finish them, but I kind of liked the idea of them. So the first one I actually finished was Chicken, which is regarded as one of the worst out of the series. It's definitely not in like my top 5. I don't think it even made it to my top 10. But it still holds a special place because that is what got me really, really into reading, and more so wanting to like create my own kind of like longer stories and stuff, right? So while I already had a love for stories and storytelling, that really just kind of, set it off. That gave me like the push, as ridiculous as that book was. And I came up with ridiculous stories as well. And they hold a special place. I don't remember all of them like to a T, but I just remember they were definitely written by a kid. Anyways, yeah. I still love Goosebumps. And I love the spin-off series. I haven't read all of the continuations, but I'm making my way through those. I really like Goosebumps 2000 and how it seems a little bit darker, but yet still for kids. It's almost like it was obvious that, the readers were kind of supposed to like grow with that kind of thing. And then there's newer Goosebumps for like a newer generation and everything, which is, they're fun. Most of them I don't love as much as some of the original ones, but there are still a lot of fun ones. The Goosebumps Most Wanted has been kind of hit and miss for me, but overall, I still love the idea of those fun, spooky stories. I also love things like scary stories, To Tell in the Dark, and In a Dark, Dark Room, which that was read to my class in first grade. And those are pretty creepy. Like, that one book is really short. Like, it's not even a middle grade one, it's like an actual like children's book, and it's really creepy. But again, I think those kind of things really started my like of slightly spooky things. I hate gore. I don't do gore. I can do like some slasher films and stuff, you know. I'm okay with those, but when it gets really, really disgustingly like gory, I can't take it. So I'm more of like the spooky-ish, not the hardcore horror, but like the spooky-ish kind of thing. I love fun short stories. And despite the fact that Goosebumps is usually like individual stories that are chapter books, I think between like the books and like the show, and also things like Are You Afraid of the Dark, that really got my like love of like short stories, especially ones that are more like supernatural side, kind of scary-ish going, because those are some of my favorite stories to write. I love writing things that have a little bit of a mystery, a spookiness to it. You know, a lot of times something a little bit emotional in there. And moving on to like other books, I really love character-driven books. I would say Goosebumps is a good mix of character and plot, because it definitely, you know, you are mostly following kids in certain spooky, scary, you know, situations and everything. So, not the most deepest of things, but I think it was a good mix of plot and character. I'm definitely more of a character person when it comes to my reading and writing, but of course it still needs a good plot. So when you have both, it becomes a favorite. Speaking of like short stories, I haven't read as many short story collections as I would like, but one of my absolute favorites, and I regard this as one of my favorite books of all time. It's definitely in my top 10. I know some people might separate like genre, like horror, mystery, romance, whatever. They might separate it by age range, you know, your favorite children's books, your favorite adult books, YA, whatever. And if I really thought about it, I probably could make several lists of those kind of things. But if we were just doing just like a general, like what is your top 10 favorite books of all time? Like no matter what, no matter if it was like an audiobook, a graphic novel, a part of a series, just books you loved, right? Zombies versus Unicorns would definitely be in the top 10. In fact, it might be book number 2, actually. It's definitely at least in the top 5. I got that book when I was still pretty new to YouTube. I played around like with videos and music before, but I made a new channel like 10 plus years ago now, where I wanted to like focus on books and other things that was going on in my life. and it had a different name than it was now. It's this channel, but it was just under a different name. And so I was pretty new to I'm getting video bombed here. I was pretty new to BookTube and some other things on YouTube, because I mainly just watched like music and stuff on YouTube. But then I got into exploring a little bit more, discovered BookTube, and one of the books that they were talking about at the time, at least a few people, was Zombies vs. Unicorns. And okay, you gotta get down. Okay, come on. So Zombies vs. Unicorns is a YA anthology which consists of two teams, basically. Team Unicorn, Team Zombie, obviously, if you couldn't tell. And so each story kind of goes from one to the other. I think the first story, if I remember, the first story is a unicorn story, then a zombie story, then unicorn. So, and they don't have stories within the book, but it's edited by Holly Black, which I've read one book by her, and Justine Larbalestier. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And I've read one from her. I really need to read more by the authors in this book, because I've only read maybe one or two, and I've been meaning to, but some of them have series and stuff, and I just don't know where to start. But anyways, I really loved the twist that these authors put on these mythological supernatural beings or whatever, because we have, zombie stories that are mainly about the evil of mankind, just about survival. There's ones about kids, surviving and trying to move on with school after their parents have basically become zombies. A lot of those are mainly survival stories. The unicorn ones really have good twists. Like, the zombie ones are some of my favorites, but the unicorn ones have like really good twists. Like, there's one about where unicorns are kind of like venomous animals and stuff. So there's one that's really funny in there, and I love the humor. And that one just really got me into wanting to make more short stories, but playing around with genre a little bit, bending genre a little bit in them, getting more slightly into fantasy, and just taking different twists on things, different perspectives and stuff, which I would say that kind of book also led me into, like I said, fantasy. There's a lot of fantasy I still want to read, but also, like I said, writing quite a bit of it. So, because some of these, like I said, they're little bits that shape things that I do now, and sometimes that goes into other books, and some of it's just kind of combined, right? So, like, after Zombies versus Unicorns, and I'm not doing these like in a specific order, I'm just kind of going off the top of my head, but another book that I fell in love with, and then it was probably the first series that I read like straight through, one after the other. There's a lot of series and stuff that I have not finished yet, and it's been quite some time, and I got to get back to them. But the first one that I ever actually finished the first book, and then I immediately got the second book, and then I read the third book, would be The Hunger Games. And that one probably started my love of like the friendship sister thing, right? I don't know if you would consider it a trope or not, or just like a kind of element in the story, right? But I'm talking about books that involved like either like close friends, or like a tight sister bond kind of thing. I love stories like those. I guess you would call it, in some ways, a found family thing, right? But I really loved how the author wove in realistic things, right? Like she created this interesting but obviously very bleak, very dark world and everything. But the characters were very believable. You felt for the characters. You noticed little things she put in there that were kind of references to current events, history, right? It was very clever how she did the names, The Hunger Games is one of those things where I watch other people's videos, and whether I agree with everything they say or not, there's things that are always being brought up that I didn't really think about. And I just love when an author is able to do that, and that's something like that I strive to do, right? And I don't want to be one of those people that just put something like political or whatever and just in your face. What I mean is just like that clever way of making you stop and think, right? Making you think about how the world was, how it can go back to being, progress we've made, progress we might be losing, characters, like I said, that feel real, that feel believable, ones that you care about. I really like that. Like I said, I'm a very character driven person in my reading and my writing. So even if you have like a bad plot, if I like the characters and I care about what's going on with them, I will continue to read the book. But yeah, I just love when people can take something that is already made, established, whatever, and cleverly weave it into a story where you know the message, but like I said, it's not just like in your face, right? You still can enjoy the story. The story still is originally theirs, but it is also there to teach you a lesson, to make you think, to make you go outside your box, right? And I think The Hunger Games did like a fantastic job with that. Even the prequel that I wasn't super crazy about, I still enjoyed, and after hearing other people's opinion, because again, there's just so much in the story that you miss, and you don't always get what the author is trying to say in these books because there's this going on, so you might miss this. I like books that are written in a way where I want to reread them, and I want to have my stories be like that, right? I want people to like it the first time, but even if they miss something, they loved it enough to read the whole thing again, right? That kind of thing. And going from like the fantasy thing in like zombies versus unicorns, the like sister bond kind of thing in the Hunger Games, and in some ways, I don't know if I would say found families in the Hunger Games, but it was definitely forming a kind of like close bond kind of thing, like when we got to like Mockingjay and stuff. So going into those, or going from those, I should say, I loved the Lunar Chronicles. So the Lunar Chronicles are a set of 4 main books. There's also 2 graphic novels that take place after the story. There's also a prequel about the villain, basically, which I actually really enjoyed. It's really short. It's like more like a novella kind of thing. And there's like a set of short stories, like, yeah, a book of short stories, which kind of take place in between and before some of the stories, like the main books. So, Little Chronicles are, like I said, a set of 4 books, and they are slight fairy tale retellings. The author, Marissa Meyer, she took like the basics of most of these fairy tales and put like a sci-fi twist kind of thing on them. So the first one is Cinder, which Cinderella, obviously. And the character of Cinder lives in what is called New Beijing, and she is a cyborg. So she was in an accident, or she was injured as a child, I think like 11 or something, and they fixed her with like robotic parts. So she's technically a person, you know, she's born as a human being, but she's got like robotic parts, and robots, androids, even cyborgs, which are technically people actually, aren't treated the best, like in this society. And as traditionally as Cinderella goes, she loses her father, which actually is not her birth father, like her biological father in the story. He adopted her. That's one kind of thing that really confused me about the story, because she calls the lady who she lives with her stepmother when she's actually technically her adopted mom. But anyways, other than that, I really liked that story. It was fun, sad. It had a twist on a fairy tale. Like, it didn't take place in like medieval Europe or whatever. There wasn't like magic. It's like a sci-fi twist on there, but also a slightly lighthearted, kind of romancy in a way. Like, it definitely is a YA story. It definitely is more targeted towards young women, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's a little predictable in some ways. That part I didn't like, because I do like, you know, a good twist I didn't see coming. But other than that, it really was just fun. And it goes within like the Cinderella story, where not both of the sisters are evil or bad. There is one that she is really close to, even though the mom and the other sister don't like her. I think it's the younger sister, if I remember correctly, that she's like attached to. And yeah, they get along. And there's like this queen on the moon. This place called the Lunar Chronicles, and she kind of basically, you know, wants to take over the earth and everything. There's a lot going on in Cinder, just like there's a lot going on in the Hunger Games, except, like I said, Cinder is a little bit more lighter than the Hunger Games. But yeah, I just love books where there's so much going on. That there's so much going on with the characters, their backstory, the history of the setting that we're in, different takes on fairy tales and mythology. You know, there's a lot going on. Like, there's a virus going around that everybody, including like the emperors and stuff, were worried about. Yeah, there's a lot going on in those stories. And I love to read that. I also trying to write that in a fantasy story that I'm going to be writing. So not only has that inspired me to look for more like dystopian stories or fairy tale retellings or fantasy, but also to do that stuff in my own writing, to get myself going and get those stories out there, get them out of my head and onto paper. I've written beginnings of the story a few times. But I didn't like how they were going. Some of the things that I wrote I will be keeping, but it's going to be like edited, which is pretty normal for writers, right? There are people who write whole books and then go edit it and everything. So I'm not too disappointed, but I'm just disappointed that I haven't got started, and I keep telling myself that I will, that I'm just gonna start writing and get it out there. But I gotta push myself to do it, so that's my own fault. But yeah, I've mostly read a lot of YA through these last few years, mainly because of BookTube. Let's admit it, while there are booktubers who do talk about adult books and everything, BookTube is very YA dominated. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it is what it is. So a lot of my reading kind of fell into that, right? Because that's what a lot of these suggestions were. So, but as I've moved on, not like away from like the booktubers I was watching, because I still watch them, but like expanded, I should say. And taking from what I was reading, you know, it's gotten me interested in other books, right? Like there's a lot of books that I want to read, which a lot of them are on my 40 before 40 list. You know, I want to eventually read like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. I want to finish The Handmaid's Tale. I started that already. I'd like to read Red Rising. That sounds interesting. So, yeah, they help me get into the genres that I like and expand upon that. A recent read, a recent series, actually the two series that I read, and this is going back again between a mix of the lightheartedness, the fun, the magical things, and some of the more heartbreaking and dark things. I really liked Caraval. I mainly liked the first book. I really liked the first book and the last book. I have not read the spin-off series, Once Upon a Broken Heart, but I did really enjoy the first book of Caraval. Again, the sister thing, right? I really like Scarlett and Donatella. They were fun characters. I wanted a little bit more magic and more carnival-esque type things in the book, but I still enjoyed it. I still enjoyed the characters. I love the writing style. I know the person who did the audiobook for the Lunar Chronicles also did Caraval. I think that's Rebecca Solar. So if you like the Lunar Chronicles, I think you would like Caraval, because it has that same kind of feel to it in a way. But Lunar Chronicles, and I'm not just saying that because it's voiced by the same person, but it made sense, right, that she did, or somebody similar sounding did, because like I said, they have the same kind of feel. They have elements where it gets a little dark, but overall it's kind of more of a fun, slightly whimsical, but not in like a totally childish way kind of thing. If you've read them, obviously you know what I'm talking about. But like one is more sci-fi, one is more magical. But I like that the tones are the same, right? But you can do it in a different genre. I really like that. And I try to have in my writing something that is me, you know, because writers, you know, when you read them, you can tell that it's a certain author, right? You can tell by the writing style, by the tone, by the language they use. And, you know, I feel that would be the kind of writer that I am. But I also obviously don't want my books to all sound the same either. So I'm reading different things, um, from things that I like, but different genres and stuff, to again expand reading and writing. Um, but yeah, I would definitely say, if you read one or the other of those two, read the other one, because I think you'd like it. I really love Three Dark Crowns. That would probably be up there in series with the Hunger Games. I can't really decide if I would put that second or if I would put the Lunar Chronicles second. But I really liked Kendara. I think her name is pronounced Kendara or Kendara Blake, and how she created her world of Fenburn. I would actually like to learn a little bit more about the country itself, but what we got was pretty interesting, and how the queendom, I guess, kind of works. So in Three Dark Crowns, there is a set of triplet queens that are born every like generation or so, right? Or every time there's a queen and she gets pregnant, she gives birth to triplets. And the queen leaves the island, and the children queens, I guess you would say, are raised by different people. So they're each born with a type of power. Now, this can vary, but mostly it is an elemental, which controls the elements of like nature, a poisoner, which can, you know, like ingest poisons and not die. And then there is a naturalist, which can control animals and bloom flowers and stuff like that. And basically, they are raised, I think, up until like 6 years old, and then they are taken to different parts of the kingdom that specialize like in their powers. And at 16, they begin the ascension year, which one of them will have to basically kill the other two to inherit the throne. And they have to do this, right? There's no sharing or whatever. Basically, they believe in this goddess, and the other sisters are basically in a way like a sacrifice. So it basically is, you know, like the rules and everything. And I loved how the characters were written in this. I loved that they had like this dilemma of, you know, loving each other, but also knowing that they have to do what they have to do, regardless if they like it or not. And yeah, going from like Katniss and Hunger Games, and then this, I like that it has one of my favorite tropes, but just like a different way. I love that it's more like female centered, because we have an island with a goddess and queens instead of kings and stuff like that. So I, you know, definitely want more books out there that have more powerful females, more female leaders. And they don't always have to be like completely all good and everything. We can have some bad characters, some morally great characters, but yeah, I really love that. I would say that because of booktube, also because of some of like the fantasy-ish things that I've read in things like the Lunar Chronicles, or Zombies vs. Unicorns, and some other things that I also really enjoyed, like middle grade whimsical things, right? I enjoyed Alice in Wonderland, and I really liked the Phantom Toll Booth. Um, they're whimsical and nonsensical, like in different ways. And I've been trying to write like children's stories and stuff. There's like a lot brewing in my head. But I love that idea of fun and whimsy, and I enjoy writing it. I think the closest I've come is not a children's story, but more like not a middle grade, more like a YA story. But I don't know if it's even a YA, because technically my characters are a married couple in this story, but they are wizards. I have a short story collection which is called Another World Called Ours. And in the book, there is a story called Two Wizards, a Leprechaun, and a Magic Llama. And the story is about two wizards who their magic can only go so far, so they go to see a leprechaun for help with things that they need, and the leprechaun gives them a magical llama. And that's probably one of my more fun stories that I've written. I also wrote a story in the same book called Night of the Killer Cupcakes, and this one is about like a group of kids who find like a spell book, and they play around goofing off and put a spell on a batch of cupcakes that they made, and the cupcakes end up coming to life and trying to kill them because they are mean, aggressive little cupcakes. So yeah, it's kind of odd how something, again, like Alice in Wonderland or anything like that would inspire certain things like that. But, you kind of take, like I said, what you read, what you enjoy, and you expand it to other things. You find things that are similar, but maybe in a different genre, maybe a different age range. Some other books that I have really enjoyed just because of the tone, because of the writing style. Two of them would be The Elegance of the Hedgehog, which got me looking more into contemporary books. Well, actually, I should mention first The Fault in Our Stars. Like, I heard about this book, and it was one of the few books that I just picked up without having read anything. Like, I knew what it was about, but like I didn't read any like chapters or samples or whatever. I just decided because it was on sale to buy it. Kind of a risky thing, yeah, but I ended up loving that book. I'm not really sure what my favorite John Green book is now, because I had issues with Looking for Alaska, but then I reread it and I kind of understood what the message was a little bit more, and that was one of my favorites. See, so that's another thing, is rereading. But again, you also have to kind of like the writing side. You have to care about the characters to do that. But those kind of things also help shape me as a reader to give things a second chance, to really look at it from different perspectives, and also to kind of not rush my own stories, because they might end up being something totally different, which I rewrote a lot of things and I like them much better now. But yeah, I would definitely say things like The Fault in Our Stars and John Green in general got me more, or at least back into contemporary reading, because I also really loved Speak. And I need to read more by that author. But I would really say Fault in Our Stars really got me back into realistic kind of fiction. And from there, I read things like trying to get more back into like adult books, things like The Elegance of the Hedgehog, which that one really felt to me sort of like listening to a podcast in a way, or like watching a YouTube video about somebody just like talking about their life. It is not the most overly exciting book. It is about a woman who works at a motel, or actually like a apartment kind of complex thing in Paris, and because of her status, she's not really supposed to be smart or into like intellectual things. I guess it's just part of the time or the culture that was there and everything. But it was very interesting to read from this character's perspective. So that also got me wanting to look more into writing contemporary or realistic fiction of my own. I also really enjoyed Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. That one had a little bit of like a mystery to it, not like a murder mystery kind of thing, but you are, in the thoughts in the head of this character who is just going about their day-to-day life, but there's also something that has gone on that you don't know exactly what it is. And I liked that aspect to it. I liked, the little bit of mystery to it, following these characters, caring about these characters. But yeah, definitely. And again, there's more like middle grade contemporary. I really liked Stargirl. That one had a little bit of like whimsy to it, but in a realistic way. It's not like Phantom Tollbooth or anything like that where they go to a different world, but it is about a very, I guess the word would be eccentric, or like very unique character that is either loved or hated by their classmates and stuff. Also, I think reading The Fault in Our Stars really did help with that too. And by that I mean getting into books where there's a lot of interesting quotes. Like, I love good quotes and everything. The Fault in Our Stars was full of fantastic quotes. Some were a little cringe, yes, but others were absolutely brilliant. I freaking love them. And I also really love them in Stargirl. But also, like I said, realistic stuff. So I really enjoyed Because of Winn-Dixie and The Shape of Thunder, which are both contemporary / realistic fiction. One is about a girl who moves, I think she moves states or towns or whatever, with her father, who's a single father. I think he's a pastor or a preacher or something like that, and she's never really knew her mother. Her mother basically abandoned her, and then she meets this dog, and you get to know these different characters. And I think it's a really good book to teach kids not to judge, that there are things going on that may not always show up on the surface, that there's different perspectives to look from. But you can also write a fun book. It doesn't always have to be gloomy, but it can talk about important issues while also being fun. Now, The Shape of Thunder, that's a little bit more heavy and that's a little bit more emotional, but it's also a very important book in my opinion. This is a middle grade book that is about not directly the aftermath of a school shooting, but it's about two friends who are greatly affected by it, because they both have people very close to them who were involved and a victim of those kind of things, and how it basically destroys their friendship. And it brings up things about women and race and religion and stuff like that. So much like the Hunger Games, but contemporary. So I really wanted to read more like realistic middle grade books, because I think those are some of the best ones. I think middle grade has some of the best books when it comes to certain issues and everything. And it's not to say that adult books are bad, but it doesn't have things like relationships and other things that are within it. It's kind of just about like dealing with those issues and everything. Also, The House on Mango Street. That one got me into wanting to read more books that are vignette style and writing a vignette type style book. I think it would be really fun and challenging. To me, it's almost like trying to write a form poetry like haiku or sonnet or something. It has to be written a certain way, and I love those kind of challenges. And like I said, I really like short stories, and those are like little tiny stories within a whole big story. And I love that kind of idea. I love those challenges. I think one of the last ones I'm going to talk about is A Lovely Bones, because that one got me into certain writing styles. Like, I love that descriptive writing. I love that emotional writing. To me, that has one of the best opening lines. Yeah, that also got me really into like great opening lines and stuff. That one had a good one. Also, A Monster Calls. Just the way they're written, especially when they're in first person, especially like when they draw you in like deeply and emotionally, like they just like really hit you when you first open that freaking book. Oh my god, I love those. And I strive to have that in my writing. You don't always have to have like overly fancy, overly like flowery writing, but I really do enjoy it. I want my books to sound somewhat elegant, somewhat deep, because this is what I enjoy reading. I'm going to write it. So, yeah, this video has gotten pretty long, and I'm sorry about that. I'm just kind of rambling on about books that I love, books that have in some way shaped my reading, shaped my writing. So anyways, thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.